Thursday Night Football kicks off between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. A big game for both sides, but also a game of two polarizing and opposite teams. There's one commonality between the two: elite quarterback play. The Cincinnati Bengals have just this tremendous QB in Joe Burrow, an easily top 4 QB in Joe Burrow. You look at the other side of the spectrum, the Baltimore Ravens. Same thing can be said for Lamar. Lamar's a top 4 quarterback in the NFL. He's a polarizing QB. When you look at both their stats, Burrow and Lamar both ranked top 5 in passing yards, tied for second in passing touchdowns, have literally no turnovers, 4 for Burrow, 2 for Lamar, and they're first and second in QBR rating. Lamar also adds 500 yards rushing with his legs. But either way, these are quarterbacks that are franchise quarterbacks, top class QBs, and quarterbacks that can lead you to the promised land. But yet, the difference within the two franchises is staggering. And what's that big difference I'm alluding to? Well, it's how they built around their QBs. And at first you might say, well, what about the contract situation with these guys? Maybe it's expensive. Well, both QBs are making the same amount of money. So we're looking at 2 franchise quarterbacks that's transcended the game, both making $50 million plus per year on their contract. Yet one team decided to go all in with their star quarterback and really take a big swing, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. They revamped. They didn't let money become an issue. They retained their star players. Marlon Humphrey, Taylor Linderbaum. They drafted well. They got Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews, they signed him to make him stick around. Then they went out there and they said, you know what? Let's keep spending money. Whatever we need to do to make Lamar a winner, we're going to do. So they went and they traded for Roquan Smith, who last year was due for a massive contract. They traded a second-round pick for him, and then they inked him to that large contract. This offseason, they signed Derrick Henry to a big contract, a contract that most people were scared of because he's a 30-year-old running back. But they said, let's give Lamar some weapons, so they got him. At the deadline, they went and traded for Deontay Johnson. This already thriving receiving core with Zay Flowers becoming a top 5 receiver right before our eyes just got better with the addition of Deontay Johnson. Then they traded for Tre'Davious White. They made moves. They didn't shy away from signing players to long-term contracts. Matabuke, their great nose tackle, was due for a contract. They signed him to a big deal. They said, we have an elite QB. Sure, Mahomes might be in our division, but let's give Lamar everything he needs and more to succeed because we're going to bet on him. Now look at the opposite side of the spectrum, the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that perhaps should have done what the Ravens did, but to a more needy effect. Because unlike the Ravens, this core that the Bengals have of T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow has 1 year left in it. Because, well, the Bengals are the Bengals. And they said, we're not going to sign T. Higgins to an extension, which is fair. I respect it, okay? But even if that's the case, they know this is their 1 year of having to go all in. And what did they do this offseason? They waved goodbye to their starting nose tackle in DJ Reader, one of the best run-stopping defensive tackles in the NFL. Now look, the Bengals. They can't stop the run to save their lives. They're terrible at it. Their best corner, Chidobe Awuzie, they didn't re-sign him. They let him go. And they crossed their fingers and they hoped that Dax Hill was going to be the answer, even though they already knew Dax Hill wasn't good. And then offensively, they don't have a run game because they said, we don't want to pay Joe Mixon $8 million per year. Probably would have taken a pay cut because he loves the organization, but they said sayonara, and they replaced him with Zach Moss, who now out with an injury. Bless up, prayers for you, Zach. We do hope you get better. But it's one of those situations. Joe Mixon's a top 5 running back in the NFL currently, and they didn't want to re-sign him. Tyler Boyd, a great wide receiver 3. See ya. We don't want to pay you. The Bengals, unlike the Ravens, didn't take these big risks or not even risks, just these big moves to help support their star QB. It's not a risk when you have a star quarterback. And let's just say, well, we want to see how this season plays out. Let's wait to the deadline. You have a healthy Joe Burrow. You have a healthy Jamar Chase. And you're 4-5. You need something. You need a bit of an oomph. You need something else, another piece. And what was their big deadline move? They traded a 7th rounder for Khalil Herbert to be a backup running back. And as I mentioned previously, what did the Ravens do? They traded for a great wide receiver 2 in Deontay Johnson. And they traded for a really good corner in Tre'Davious White. The Bengals did nothing. And now you look and you see Joe Burrow. He said in a press conference, well, why should I show emotion? Why should I look happy on the sideline if there's nothing to be happy about? And his ideology, his belief was, well, we want to score every drive. We want to be the best we can possibly be. And that's true. And I'm sure that, this is part of a leadership role that's prevailing. But you also got to look deeper into it. And when the deeper you look into it, the more you realize he's probably just pretty darn upset that he's healthy for once in his career, playing his best ball, no weird appendix injury. And the Bengals have done nothing to support him. They let their entire defense go. They didn't retain a star running back. They didn't get a good wide receiver 3. And on top of that, they didn't re-sign either of his buddies in Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. And you like to think Jamar is coming back, but who knows? I mean, the way the Bengals operate, they don't like to pay anybody. In terms of the game itself, the Bengals traveling to Baltimore to face the Ravens, I wouldn't call it a must-win game for the Bengals, right? They're 4-5. If they were to lose, they become 4-6, but their road to the playoffs in the rest of their schedule is pretty manageable, right? After tonight, they play at the Chargers, which you have an extended rest period. That's a wild card team that you're competing against. The Bengals have a better QB in that matchup. Give me the Bengals. They played the Steelers twice this year. Let's just say they split. They played the Cowboys with Cooper Rush starting. They played Tennessee. They played the Browns and the Broncos. I mean, out of that remaining schedule, that's 7 games. The minimum, they're winning 6 of those 7. I could see them splitting with Pittsburgh at the worst. That's 10 wins. That should be good enough to get you in there. It's not a must-win. It's not a must-win game for Cincinnati tonight, but it would be a big one for Cincinnati because it would really solidify their chances of making the playoffs, but also keep them in the hunt for the AFC North. As far as the Ravens go, I mean, this would be a tremendous victory for the Ravens. They'd be 7-3. They'd be in prime position to win the division because they have 2 games left against the Steelers, and they'd be firing on all cylinders. In the past 7 games, they've won 6 of them, with their only loss coming at the Cleveland Browns, beating the likes of the Commanders, the Bucks, the Broncos, the Bengals already, throttling the Bills. I mean, if they beat the Bengals tonight, it's really just a matter of who could possibly beat the Ravens besides maybe the Chiefs. Because, wow, they are firing on all cylinders. What a tremendous team they have. Not a must-win for either side, but would be a huge win for both sides. One last thing I want to wrap up about with the Bengals scenario, Baltimore situation. When you look at the teams and you say, well, hey, not everybody made moves, right? What about the Bills? They didn't make a move this offseason to get better, right? They didn't make a move. They were trying to tank this season away. They traded Stephon Diggs, and they were relying on a bunch of rookie wide receivers and Dalton Kincaid, a second-year tight end. But as soon as they saw that there's a glimmer of hope that they can succeed, they made a big splash and they acquired Amari Cooper. And you might say, well, what's the glimmer of hope for the Bengals? They've won 3 of the past 4 games, and Joe Burrow is healthy. He's never been banged up all season. He's playing his best football we've seen probably in his career, whether you want to admit it or not. This is his best brand of football we've ever seen from him. And yet they sat on their hands. So when there's top teams in NFL that you can even say, well, they want to try and wait things out. when they see that the team's just doing well, they make a big move. And they, like the Bills did, just like the Bengals, they said, well, we're going to let some pieces walk away. We're going to reevaluate the season, see how it goes. The Bengals, to a lesser extent, though, because in my opinion, again, this was their championship window with T. Higgins. With the Bills, it kind of remained open because they didn't have to be so reliant on wide receivers. And then all of a sudden, they're winning games. They're 7-2. They were, 5-2, and they said, let's go get Amari Cooper. We're going to go all in. Let's get him. The Bengals didn't do that. Tough situation to be in if you're a Bengals fan.